Hello, everyone. We are your landlords, tapping out and flooding out so that you don't have to, with the occasional screw. It happens. So, I'm Hamhocks42, and I'm joined by the one and only Astralsflame. Astros, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, bud. I'm doing good. You know, it's Friday. We're hanging out. It's a great time. Work is over. Magic's going to happen. I'm excited. And we've got some cool stuff coming in the next week. I mean, what? The one pre-release is literally a week away. So new set, new cards, new stuff. I don't know about you, but I'm
Happening.
excited. I'm excited.
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm also really intrigued to see what happens with Proliferate entering Standard again, because that's one of those mechanics that when it's done right, it is exceptional. And when it does wrong, or when it's done wrong, we all have to deal with Atraxin, Commander. So we'll see. I am very nervous as to how this set is going to function, and I'm very curious to see how it impacts Standard. I have some predictions about how it's going to go, but this isn't necessarily the time or the place for that. Well, we might get into it today. Who knows? Like, yeah, yeah. But in any event, we do have a listing today that I'm very excited to get into. So without further ado, I suppose let's just jump right on into it. You posed a very interesting question. It was funny. You sent me this like a week ago, just kind of like pitching, like, here's an idea, and I was like, that's amazing. And it's just the question of what is casual Magic,
Right?
yeah.
What
What is that? Like competitive Magic, it's easy to kind of wrap your head around, right? Because in competitive Magic, we have tournaments, we have live structures. There's the Pro Tour. There's, basically, if you're playing Magic in the hopes of winning some kind of prize, okay, that's competitive Magic on one level or another. That's pretty straightforward. And you can be a more competitive player even if prizes aren't on the line. But like that mentality is, you can kind of tell when it's there. Like if you're playing on the ladder, for example, on Arena, if you're trying to get Mythic, I mean, that is a competitive environment. There are stakes on the game, but at the same time, I don't think of myself as a competitive player, but I do play on the Arena ladder. I do go there, but I don't consider myself necessarily competitive. But is what I'm doing casual? It's an interesting question, and one that I find really fascinating, kind of at the heart of what a lot of Magic content is really about. Because you see different, when it comes to the content sphere, there's the question of like, okay, who's your audience? Obviously Magic players, but like, are you going for tournament grinders? Are you going for spikes? Or are you going for a more casual crowd? And what does that mean? Who do you go for? So I guess before I go, I could ramble for days all on my own about this. But before we go any further, I guess for you, what does the word casual Magic mean to you, or the phrase casual Magic?
See, I'm terrible at answering this definition because I'm like you. I can answer what competitive is, right? We know that's defined. That's tournaments. That's everything. I like to consider myself actually as a competitive player because I do enjoy tournaments, rank ladder. Even if I play weird Jund builds on rank ladder, I still try to do it. But like defining casual, as a kind of hot take, I don't know that you can actually define it. It's too broad to give one standard definition that I find because like we've got casual commander, casual 60 card, casual pop. I don't even know if casual pauper exists. For sake
Casual
of
Pauper?
argument,
Someone out there's got to be playing it. Yeah.
I feel like there's casual pauper to an extent. Like there's these forms of casual, but when you go to define it, okay, what makes it up? What's the terminology? What defines it? Is it a price point? Is it a card power level? What puts it together? Like, is my Thassa's Oracle commander deck that runs Thassa and doesn't do consultation or like have demonic consultation and all that stuff? Is that casual because I play Thassa's Oracle or not? No, I don't. For the record, I don't actually play Thassa's Oracle. I'm gonna preface that. I Jund and Rakdos.
We need to be on the record. No,
Yes.
no blue in these commander decks.
I'm not a Thassa's player. No, but point of game, like, how do you define the metrics of a casual deck? Like, how would you define him?
Dude, I don't know. That's a really tough idea. And I think the biggest aspect, for me anyway, is the attitude of the players. And it's funny too because we see it very clearly called out in Commander. People talk about Commander or EDH, and when you talk about just Commander, if you just say, like, just in general, hey, I'm having a Commander night, would you like to come? There's kind of this assumption, oh, it is a casual Commander pod. unless you specifically say this is CEDH or this is competitive EDH. Like CEDH is its own idea. So in a casual commander pod, there is this like social contract, this expectation that you'll be upfront about what your deck is trying to do, about the power level that you're trying to bring to the table. Like if you're trying to combo kill everybody by turn 4 with like, you know, Heliod, Walking Ballista, you need to be upfront. Like that's what this deck does.
Yeah.
Is everybody here cool with that? Because that, like, if I bring this deck and it fires correctly, that's exactly what's going to happen. You know, and if somebody isn't okay with that, or somebody says like, well, I only brought this one deck and it really can't hang with that, so I would rather you didn't do that, then it's on the other deck owner to respond accordingly by either picking a different deck or maybe taking the Walking Ballista out, or, you know, and like swapping it in for something else, like that kind of thing. Like responding in such a way that like, okay, well, I won't do this then. In one way or another. Like there's this expectation because the goal of the game is to create a gameplay experience. It's not necessarily just to win. Whereas in CEDH, the goal is to win.
Yeah.
You know,
no
like
doubt.
as far as I understand, that's the idea. Like my understanding is if like there is no real rule 0 conversation in a CEDH deck. Because if it's like, yeah, my goal is to like ad nos combo kill everyone on turn 2. Is everybody good with that? Yeah, well, that's me too. So all right, cool. Like I think that's my understanding is that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And in that case, we're talking about a mentality. Like you're going into the game with this either this really spiky competitive mindset or this really loose casual mindset. And I think that's really key to determine. Like when I'm playing on the ladder, if I'm playing Arena or like when I'm streaming, most of the time I'm trying to build some kind of deck to do a certain thing. Whether that's trying to pull off some weird combo or whether that's trying to make a card like Deathbellow Warcry playable, to just pull a recent example, which actually worked pretty well, if I may say. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Like, I like finding weird cards that shouldn't work and trying to find ways to make them work, with the understanding and with the expectation that I will probably lose more than 50% of my games with these decks. Because my goal is to make this weird, crazy thing happen, not necessarily to win more games than I lose. And so as a result, by most people's metrics, these decks are failures. When in fact, if I get to do the thing, you know, in 1 out of every 5 games, sweet, I'm doing the thing. That's exactly what I set out to do. So that is, I would say, a more casual mindset. And it's funny on Arena specifically. I find it funny because one of the pieces of feedback that I get a lot is people saying, I wish there was some kind of jank queue or some kind of casual queue. I wish there was a way where I could just basically signal to everybody as on my way into the game that I'm not here with a meta deck to try to win. I'm just going to try to do something fun. To which I respond, it's a fun idea, but that's kind of a utopian idea and it could never happen because how do you define it and how do you enforce it?
Yeah, you really can't. Like, you know, let's use the play queue as a quick example, right? Like when I think play queue, I think, okay, this is going to be a casual place. But again, what's casual, right? I think I'm not going to run into meta decks, but people still bring their meta decks in. I mean, I've done it too. If I don't know a deck, I bring a deck I don't know into play queue and I try it out because to me, casual environment. But again, like it's an open-ended metric to define basically everything else that can't be put into a metric. And that's kind of what makes it hard to define casual play. Like touching on CEDH, you can define a CEDH deck because people are going in with a set running goal. But casual, what is your goal? Is your goal could be to have fun. Your goal could be to pull off this cool 10 card combo. Your goal could be to play Door of Nothingness in Historic and make someone lose the game, like right in a format. There's so many different goals and so many different things that you can use to define a casual deck, casual environment, casual play. You can't really lump them all together. And to me, I think it's personally impossible to really give a definition to casual. I think you can say things are casual. This is a casual mindset. I think you can do it that way, but I don't think you can strictly say we are building in the quick argument for Arena. I don't think you can say this is like a casual ladder. I don't think you can say there is a casual mode. I don't think there's a good way to say there is casual commander. I think you either have commander or you have the optimized competitive variant. Same as for Magic, you know, and other standard or modern explorer. You have the competitive meta that is put in tournaments when people play. You have everything outside of that.
Yeah, I'm glad to agree. I mean, it's funny because one of the things I've noticed is people will put like parameters around, and I think that's ultimately why we have different formats.
Mhm.
You know, like the reason that Magic is broken into different formats is so that we could get different play experiences. You know, if there were no formats in Magic, if Magic was just Magic, you know, where it started, then all of a sudden, like I could be over here trying to play, you know, my new, you know, mono white might deck where I'm trying to toxic somebody out. Meanwhile, my opponent could literally be doing like Factor Fiction Black Lotus combos and have me dead before, or you know, with like Necromentia and crazy stuff like that, and have me dead before I get to draw my cards. Like, and okay, those are vastly different experiences, and the biggest difference between those is just access to cards. And so that's, you know, so the idea of having things broken down into different formats makes it so that, okay, if I'm brand new to the game, I can play standard and I only have to worry about cards that came out within the last year and a half to 2 years. I can, that is a very small card pool. I can kind of wrap my brain around that. Understand there's this whole other world if I want to dive into it, but this is it for now. And I think that's important. And that's where like Pauper, and even there's a format that Arena has that I don't know that it's done in paper at all, called Artisan, where it's
Oh,
all
yeah.
commons and uncommons. Artisan is awesome, by the way. I think
is.
that format is super fun, because you have some very powerful uncommons and some very cool build arounds at the uncommon slot that you don't get in Pauper. Meanwhile, those big swingy bombs at the rare and mythic slots are not there at all. And so as a result, you end up with these decks that like feel pretty powerful, but they don't have like, there's an it factor that a lot of the rares carry with them in constructed play that Artisan just doesn't quite have. So your deck building is rewarded for finding synergies in a way that it isn't necessarily with higher, you know, with higher rarity cards. Because right now, for example, actually the current standard meta is a great example of this. Like the Grixis mid-range deck that is just the bee's knees right now, there's very little synergy going on in that deck itself. It's really just the best cards in these three colors. And
Yep,
those three colors happen to have pretty much all the best cards. So, okay. You know, it's like, aha, I bet you didn't see this coming. Fable into Sheoldred. Like, you know, how do those cards help each other? It's like, well, yeah, chapter 2 on Fable is good if Sheoldred's down, I guess. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. And
their synergies are kind of synergy by default and a one-time payoff. Like, sure, Fable synergizes with Sheoldred, but that's only on chapter 2. That's only once. Sure, Corpse Appraiser synergizes with Fable on, you know, chapter 2 in the flip. Any non-legendary creature synergizes with Fable.
So true. Exactly.
Any deck that wants cards in the graveyard synergizes with Fable. Sheoldred loves anything that draws you cards. Those are just general things together. But like, you know, to your point on Artisan, you do get rewarded for your deck building and the synergies you find. Like, I think in a while back, I actually played in a historic Artisan tournament, which was super fun. I brought Ragdoll Sacrifice as my deck, and I played Vladimos. And
yeah,
right.
that's cash money. That's perfect. I love it.
That's synergy though, right? Because my whole plan is sacrifice things die. It's gonna be easy to get 5 things dead, and like I'm making a token that dies. I obviously want to find stuff from my deck, like that's synergy, and I mean that was a blast. But do you consider Artisan casual? Because there's no rank ladder, there's no like tournament. Is Artisan casual?
That's a great question. And at the end of the day, I think the answer to that is not necessarily, but it can be. It is very friendly to a casual experience, but you don't have to be playing. You don't have to be casual to play Artisan. You can play. I mean, you're just saying about being in a tournament, like that you're in a competitive environment where you can put those on. One of the things that I know as a streamer myself, I've been looking into possibly starting tournaments. That's something I've talked about for a while. And given that my perspective is generally on a more casual angle where I like janky brewing and like creative deck building, that's really what I enjoy the most. I would want to encourage that in a tournament environment. So if I were to do that, I mean, obviously the moment it becomes a tournament, it already is competitive to some degree. But in trying to find a way to make it more casual, I don't really know the best way to do that. And one of the things I have thought about is Artisan. Because like all of a sudden, all these standard decks and all these explorer decks and historic decks that you know are out the window. You have to start over to some degree or modify heavily a deck that you currently have. And your mana base is going to get a whole lot worse right away, which is kind of fun too. So these are all things you got to deal with. And I like that because then that kind of puts people like off the back foot. Like the moment you have a standard or an explorer tournament, not only do people have those decks already in their collection or at least know the lists that they like, but if they don't have them themselves, they can find 1,000 different variants of whatever archetype they want out on the internet. You know, you could go to Aether Hub, you could go to Moxfield, you could go to wherever and or you could just Google like Explorer Greasefang, boom. And within 30 seconds, depending on your internet connection, I suppose, you have a list already ready to go with all 75 cards locked and loaded. You might have to craft a couple, but there you go. You're good to go. You have a tournament caliber deck. You know, and I mean, and heck, in paper, half the time there's the little like buy now button where you can just straight up purchase the entire deck and have it shipped to you. Yeah. I mean, like,
literally though, yeah,
that's the thing. That's available. You can just do that. So it's like I would just like to spend $600 and just get this standard deck or whatever. Like you can now do that. That's, I mean, kudos to everybody like behind the scenes making those kind of things happen. But like at the end of the day, those competitive decks are available. Casual decks are different. And that's actually another thing I find fascinating about Commander specifically. I feel like the reason that Commander is so popular, like Commander has become like one of, if not the single most popular way to play paper.
It is
Magic.
The single most played. It has.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of that, the last couple of years, it's easy to write off because we haven't had a good pro scene in paper. Yep. And to Wizards' credit, they're trying to bring that back. And it's funny too because a lot of people are just like, oh, well, COVID just stopped the pro tour. And it's like, well, if you look back at 2019, they were doing a huge arena push. Mm-hmm. And so like all the competitive events with the mythic qualifiers where they were all done on arena. Like Wizards was already putting like hammering the nails in the existing Pro Tour's coffin when COVID hit, and they were just able to be like, "Hey, we're just gonna be able to wash our hands of all this anyway." Different story for another day, I suppose. But there's the idea where competitive paper became relegated to like just Friday Night Magics at your local game store, and then even those stopped happening for at least a year in most places. So competitive paper just kind of ceased. And as a direct result, Commander kind of filled that gap. And I'm not surprised that it's like the #1 paper format because it's like you kind of have to do it in paper or MTGO. And paper's a significantly better experience than MTGO, in my opinion. And folks like myself, and I'm assuming yourself and many other, maybe those listening at home, we already have paper collections. Like I have a ton of paper cards lying around. And so the fact that there is a casual environment where I am able to just sift through my stuff, find a handful of cards that might work alongside a legend I happen to have lying around, I can just put the deck together with the understanding that even if the deck is bad, like even if the deck, and by bad, I mean, I
was going to say, I actually have a random legendary sitting right beside me.
That's hilarious.
It's draft enough, but I'll never play because it's blue, but...
Hey, I love that. Meanwhile, I have a Colossus Hammer on my desk because Colossus Hammer's rad. It is what it is. But it's a great card. I can't help it.
It's good.
Cheating stuff out's my favorite thing. And if the thing I'm cheating out is a massive stat boost, I see no problem with this. But so Commander, the deck can be suboptimal. The deck can be a little goofy. It doesn't have to be great. It can be, slow. It can revolve around a big weird combo, and that's okay because the goal of Commander is to have fun playing the game, not necessarily to win the game. And so you can do weird stuff. You can do slower stuff. I find it funny when people are like, "Hey, is this card playable in Commander?" Like, yes. Everything's playable in Commander, man. Get out here. Like whatever you got, go ahead and run it out. If you want to find a way to try to kill your pod with Polar Kraken, do it. Good luck, but do it. It's funny. I have a 5-color deck that I just put some finishing touches on today. Mana base is awful, by the way, where the goal is literally to kill the 3 other players all with door to nothingness triggers. That is literally the goal of the deck. Is it going to be consistent? Absolutely not. Is it going to work ever? Probably not. but it's a fun
That
idea, and
one
I want to see if I
time.
can make it work. You know, it's goofy, but why not try it, right? Like, why not? So, and like in Commander, you can do crap like that. You can get weird and you can get off the wall, and that's fun. And so as a result, Commander captured the casual audience in a big way and just set the world on fire because there was clearly a market of millions of Magic players who had no Pro Tour aspirations, who just enjoyed playing the game with their friends. And Commander was like, hey, by the way, here's this format that's for you. How, like, that's so big. That's huge. And so I'm not surprised that it's a big deal.
Agreed.
Because casual format is a big deal. It's
So-
like, your casual Magic is a big deal. Yeah.
It is. So like on the point of Commander and the different play styles that people do with Commander, do you feel that with casual play it's appropriate to put labels on a way to play casual? Because we hear people how they play, right? Like this is a budget Commander list. This is a casual Commander list. This is an optimized list, but not CDH. And the power. I'll return quick to the power scale that sometimes gets used. I don't like it. I don't endorse it. Please, if you can avoid it, please do. Just my opinion. But people will say, okay, a casual deck is like a 7 or less. Makes me shudder just saying that. But again, people use there are instances of using that to define it, and like is it appropriate to define that though? Because like I mean personally, I don't think you can put a label on casual play. I think if casual is how you want to play. Like competitive, we can clearly denote there is a way, there's a path, there tournament gets in, there is competitive play is defined. I think casual you can't really stick labels on, and casual is how you want to play. But Cam, what about you? What's your view?
I think you're 100% correct. It's tricky because when it comes to the idea of just putting labels on it, it's very hard to just have a one-size-fits-all label for anything in particular. So yeah, the power scale, like you're saying, like power level, it's a 1 to a 10. Like everything along the spectrum is up for debate, right? And everybody says their deck is a 7. It's become a joke. Like every deck is a 7. Because like I've tried to build it so it's strong at what it does, but what it does is probably slower than what the competitive people are doing. So it's probably about a 7.
Yeah, like you know what? My Drafna 99 Islands deck is totally a 7.
Sounds about right. Sounds like a 7, yeah. Well, but the thing about that too is it depends on what you're trying to do. Like, and I think you need to be clear not on like people get hung up on power level, and I think that is the wrong conversation. I don't think power level is meaningful at all. Because power level can be defined in a ton of different ways depending on who's talking. Is your deck designed to do something quickly? And how heavy is it on interacting with the players around it? Those are the things that people care about. One of my go-to decks, I have an Abzan deck that whenever I sit down with a new play group is the first Commander deck I usually bring. Because I feel like it exemplifies the kind of things I like to do. It has a little bit of aristocratic stuff, a little bit of group hug stuff, and I'm recurring crap out of my graveyard, which is like my favorite. And the Commander is plan B. I do not lead with the Commander, but it's a big F off dragon that can mess you up if it has to. So, okay, cool. Like, it's my 10 of the Harvester deck. I love that deck, and it is my go-to whenever I sit down with a new play group for the first time. It also, like when I say group hug, it has Howling Mine. It has Veteran Explorer, which is like is a card I enjoy so much. I actually did a YouTube video telling people to play it more often. It has Fecundity, which just draws cards every time. Like a player draws a card every time one of their creatures dies. Like crap like that. It just gets weird and fun and ridiculous. I also have Carrion Feeder, which is one of my favorite sack outlets of all time. It's classic. It's classic. Anyway, so I have a lot of those fun interactions. But the other thing is, I'm also running cards like Ashen Rider. I'm running Merciless Eviction. And I have a number of targeted removal spells. Like I also have like Binding the Old Gods and things like that in there. And sometimes people get really hung up on the idea of like, wait, you said this was casual, and you just looped a Fleshbag Marauder 3 times. Like you just wiped the entire board, and here you are saying that you're having a casual. Your deck is a casual deck. It's like, well, I personally don't believe casual means no interaction.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to interact with each other's boards, because if you define casual as battle cruiser, like I just do my thing, you just do your thing, and we smash them against each other, then all of a sudden you're using the word casual to describe fragile.
Yeah.
Like my deck is very easy to disrupt. Therefore, I'm gonna label it casual. That way, I can do the dumb 5-card combo. And accept that. You should be able to interact with people. I think that's important. It's a key part of the game, in my opinion. Which is funny. It's funny too. I am a graveyard enthusiast. I love my graveyards. As far as I'm concerned, no zone should be outside of play. I want to be able to take advantage of every resource at my disposal. And if there's a card that lets me use my graveyard, awesome. That said, if I'm going up against an Enchantress player, for example, and they play out Rest in Peace.
Oh, my heart hurts every time.
It hurts. It hurts. But at the same time, I'm not mad.
No,
like I've had so many people who would be like, "You're playing Grafdiggers in your commander deck? Oh, that just shuts me out. That shuts my whole deck off. I'm out." And it's like, dude, if you can't, like, honestly, my opinion on that is if I cannot play around your Rest in Peace or your Line of the Void, that's my problem, and I need to fix something about my deck to change the way it functions. And that's why I have cards like Ashen Rider or Angel of Despair that allow me to answer target non-land permanent. Like, those are flexible, and they can break up what you're trying to do. Like, I need to be able to disrupt your game plan while trying to get my game plan online. Meanwhile, you're trying to disrupt my game plan while getting your game plan online. That's what I love to see. Those are the kind of games I enjoy, where there's back and forth. Like, the other thing, I know people hate playing against control. Like, a lot of people absolutely despise going up against, like, just board wipe and counter spells all day, which in 1v1 formats, it can be annoying. I get that.
Yeah, in 1v1, but in multiplayer?
In multiplayer, though, like, exactly. It's like somebody's trying to play control in multiplayer. That is a Herculean feat. If they can actually pull it off, good for them, And, like, at the end of the day, I don't really mind it. It doesn't bother me. I don't see any problem with any individual play style, but be open with your play group about it. Like hardcore control or stacks is the other one that, like, some people get really hung up on stacks specifically.
I love stacks games.
I kind of do too. Like, they're fun.
It's spicy. It's such a different way. Like,
yeah.
You gotta play around so much. You're like, man, I normally don't have to do this. Like,
yeah, you gotta do a lot of, like, you gotta think a lot. Exactly. Yeah. And so for anybody listening who's not familiar with the expression stacks, it's named after a card called Smokestacks. And basically the idea is stripping your opponents of resources and preventing them from executing their game plan, period. Like, your goal is to straight up lock your opponents out of the game. And so things like Drannith Magistrate is a stacks piece. And in that it prevents you from playing cards from outside or from exile. So you add, like, or anywhere from other than your hand, I believe. So the moment you add Drannith Magistrate to a deck, all of a sudden flashing back spells out of graveyards, off the table. Casting your commander, off the table. These things become very, very difficult to execute. And you'd be surprised how many cards, like, draw cards into exile and let you cast them from there. Like, that's very common. And being able to just shut that off completely is a big freaking deal. So that's an example of one stacks piece. There are tons more. Like, Winter Orb, keeping lands tapped. Stasis is just, like, one of the go-to. Just, like, if you drop a Stasis. It's funny. EDH actually has a list of the saltiest cards, like the cards that just get people angry the most, and with the idea of, like, you might want to avoid putting these into your decks, but there are people out there just scrolling that list to determine exactly what to put in their decks. But anyway,
fun fact about that, just as a quick note, Armageddon's actually fallen closer off that list. Its salt score has decreased in the last 3 years. Just a fun fact.
Really?
Yeah, actually.
Dude, Armageddon was like top 10 salt score last I checked.
Nope. It's like top 25, I think, now. It's not top 10
wow.
anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, mass land destruction, another key example of a playstyle most people do not enjoy. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I find a good stacks game to be really interesting. If you can, because then it becomes a battle of resources, which is another thing. Like, when you're playing control or tempo, it's very interesting. Like, I play a lot of standard, so that's kind of my go-to, like, frame of reference. And, like, as of this recording, the current mono blue deck in standard is a really interesting example of this.
Yes.
Because the mono blue deck in standard holds up counter spells, holds up bounce spells, and then protection spells, like Slip Out the Back and Shore Up. But when they drop a Haughty Djinn, their game plan becomes protect the Haughty Djinn, use the Haughty Djinn to punch your face. You got about 3 turns. Can you can you kill me in that time? And if you're going up against that deck, when the Haughty drops, you have to accept that the game has changed. Your goal is no longer to get your opponent down to 0 life. Your goal is now kill the Haughty Djinn. Whatever you have to do, you have to get that off the board. And so if you get 2 for 1 trying to get it off the board, but you succeed, worth it. Easy, no question.
Yep.
Because that deck needs that in order to win. So as a player, your goal needs to be understand what are the key pieces that my opponent's leveraging that is going to bring them to victory. And what do I need to do to prevent that? Which is why I love watching control mirror matches.
It's interesting when like you go
so interesting. Because like one of the things that I've loved watching actually in Explorer and Historic, and I've had the privilege of doing commentary for like Explorer tournaments, and when 2 Azorius control decks butt heads, it is fascinating to watch. You will see so many turns that are draw, land, pass, just waiting for the other person to make the first move. Because a lot of the time in those matches, whoever makes the first move ends up losing. And you'll also see if an opponent gets a Teferi Hero of Dominaria or a Shark Typhoon, like a hardcast Shark Typhoon to just hit the board, the other person will usually just scoop that game. Like, there's still at least another 2-3 turns before that is going to result in a victory. Like, before a life total would actually reach 0. However, the amount of value that's going to accrue, and the game plan is get one of these resources on the battlefield. That's the entire goal. Once one of those resources is on the battlefield, then all of a sudden, like, you pretty much win because the amount of value that it generates. And then you just prevent your opponent from getting theirs on the battlefield too. Because if you can have, in an Azorius Mirror, if you have Teferi Hero of Dominaria down and your opponent doesn't, and you go 2 turns unchecked, you are going to just draw more cards. You've got it. Yep. That's it. Meanwhile, take that exact same Azorius control deck, go up against like a mono red rush deck. The game has nothing to do with denying your opponent resources. That's not your goal. Like, that's not what you're doing at all. Your entire goal is now prevent damage to my face. That's it. That's all you're doing. Because you need to get to your turn 4 board wipe, and you need to live till you get there and get into the long game. So you need to have a different mindset as you approach that game. So, control, stacks, they are not necessarily competitive playstyles. They are different playstyles. And for the casually minded Magic player out there, I would highly recommend that when you go into a game plan, whether that's a commander game, whether that's a friendly match on Arena, whether that's the latter, if you're in any kind of environment and you find yourself saying, I hate that deck, or I hate the thing this person's doing, take a deep breath and try to identify, what is it about this that is upsetting me? Why is this frustrating to me? And I think you'll find most of the time it's because your deck or your play decisions are not designed to go up to deal with it. Yeah. And believe it or not, a lot of the time you don't even have to change your deck. You just have to change the way you play.
Yeah, it comes down, and I think you said the word mindset. Like, casual comes in as a casual mindset, and you have to keep the mindset about casual because you can't put a label on everything. There's so many different ways a person's going to play or do. People that do enjoy running no interaction, people that do love interaction, people that play stacks, people that don't, people that play aggro. There's so many different labels. You'll never wrap your hand around it. So you need to keep in mind, competitive has a defined way it plays. Casual's defined way of plays is that anything goes. Literally anything goes. And you need to keep a mindset about casual play that anything can happen in order to adapt. And in actuality, that will help a person grow because, like you said, you see how different play styles go out. If you're like losing to a specific type of card, well, you probably should run something in your deck that helps do that. Like, that's going to help you grow as a player, and it's still a casual acceptance of something. And also, kind of tying into the point, a way a person plays. So, we've all got our favorite deck. Like, Ham, you touched on your Tanem deck, which I absolutely loved the last time we played. It's super sweet.
Nice. It's fun.
You can adjust how you kind of do it. There's different combo lines, and like, to me, like looping 3 flash quarters, that's casual to me, and that's pretty sweet when that happens. The way you play a deck can change based on your mindset. So one of my favorite decks is Ziatora. The way I play the deck changes based on the group I'm with. If I am with a group that doesn't really run a ton of removal, because sometimes that happens, players have their different style, you change your mindset. I can play the game where I go and tutor a great Imperious Worm and I chuck 16 damage at someone. Or, use Lord of Extinction, its power and toughness equal to the number of cards in all graveyards, and I use Ziatora to fling it at someone for 80 and they die. I can do stuff like that. Or I can change how I play. I can do Vivian on the Hunt in the list. I can use my creatures to scale up and scale down a ladder with Riveteer's Ascendancy and generate value upon value upon value and make the game interesting. I can target people with Ziatora, or if I feel like I'm too far ahead, I can use Greater Good and sacrifice Lord of Extinction to deck myself. I can fundamentally play and adjust how I play with the group depending on the level, and that's in my mindset. And that is a cool thing about casual is when you have the mindset to just enjoy it and have fun, it opens up a whole much better world, I find.
Oh, 100%. I could not agree with that more. And I've had a couple situations. It's also fine especially in an environment where everybody has acknowledged that it's casual, to even call that out. Like, I remember one pod I was in, there was a streamer, fellow content creator, Ice Yoshi, who was there playing Light Paws. And I don't even remember. I was playing a Broko's Mutate deck for that game. And we were in, I don't know, 7th, 8th turn. Like, boards were established. And I had a couple things going on. But they had Light Paws with enough enchantments to make it unblockable. And I'd already taken, like, 15 commander damage at that point. And so he just straight up said, okay, I recognize that, like, the strategically smart thing to do is attack him here. But we've only been playing for, like, a half an hour. And that would be really rude. So I'm not going to do it. And it's like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And it was 100% correct. Like, yes, eliminating me eliminates a quarter, a third of the threats that he was facing in that game. It would have made logical sense if the goal is just to win the game. But given that the goal is to have a fun time with these other people, Yoshi decided, I'm going to pump the brakes. I'm not going to take that attack. And even just acknowledged it. And I even acknowledged, yeah, no, I wouldn't be mad if you did. It's a good move. But thanks, I appreciate that. And it did provide and it's funny, in the end, I actually ended up winning that game because I got an Auspicious Sterex down and just flooded my board. My webcam couldn't handle all the permanents on the board. And we were all laughing and having a good time because every player got a chance to have their deck do something. And my deck happened to just be the last one standing to do the thing. But even in the end, I wasn't just like, oh, I'm the greatest, I won that game. I was just like, Yoshi, thank you for not killing me like at the halfway mark when you absolutely could have and probably should have. But we were all giggling and having a good time. And it was, we had a great experience communally. And that's what that game was about. And in that regard, I think we all won like really well. Like as a casual experience, it was perfect.
I think that is the best way to define a casual experience. Like your casual experience isn't defined by what a deck is or what it is. It's your mindset and what you want to go into a game for. If your mindset is just for a good time and fun, I think to me, that's casual. Define it further however you want. I personally wouldn't put further labels on it, but going with a good time, going that you're going to change how you're thinking about some stuff. You're going to hit things differently. And, when you do the comeback story like Ham, remember in your great acceptance speech at the end, I'd like to thank all the players I've had today. Thank you to not killing me on this turn. My deck was able to fortunate. I'd like to thank my commander. I'd like to thank player A for the additional 15 cards they let me draw from the group hug. I'd like to thank player B for not targeting me with that removal at the nth hour. Like,
yeah, you build. Thank you to everyone. Yeah, thank you to everyone who didn't pay the one.
We appreciate everyone who doesn't pay the one.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah. That's me, by the way. I'm that guy. If you're when going around the pod, if you're like, yeah, it's not uncommon. Actually, just last week, I was in a game where a Smothering Tithe was down, and we had a number of turns around the table where the Smothering Tithe was just sitting there, and there were players who straight up left 2 mana open, didn't do anything with it, but I was like, I'm not paying it. Like, why are you not paying it?
That's dangerous.
That's my defense, I didn't pay it. I didn't pay it once, but I was using my mana for other stuff. Like, that's my defense. I was actually using my mana for other stuff that probably got removed by all the mana that they were able to generate off those treasures. But regardless, so anyway, but yeah, exactly. Be aware of what got you there. And like, honestly, if your play group chose not to hit you with lethal at one point in a game of Commander, acknowledge that like that was part of the decision. And also, don't be afraid to take suboptimal lines.
Yes.
Like, you might have it. 100%. Don't be afraid to do that in a casual game. That's actually a really smart move. There are times where you'll have the nuts, you'll have the combo, you'll be able to fire it, and sometimes the right thing to do is you can even say it. You can even say I have it. And one thing that I have seen people do, which I think is a classy way to handle it, I've seen people like play it out, say this is how it works. Now I'm going to concede so the three of you can continue playing.
Yes,
I was like,
I respect
all
that.
right.
I love that.
Like that's not a bad way to go. You know, it's like acknowledge like, yep, I had it. This could have killed everybody. I'm just gonna step away so the game can carry on because you three have developed cool board states and I want to see where this goes. Like, all right, like that's not a bad way to handle it. But the other thing is you can just choose not to. You can choose to loot it away. You can just sit with the card in your hand. Like you can just pass. Believe it or not, that is a fine option. Depending on the vibe around the table. Like read the room. In casual environments, read the room. That is so important. Yeah.
Like if you've got one card left in hand, your combo's about to go off, be like, and you have, I don't know, like 6 or 8 mana left open, just being like, stare at your card, stare at the table, stare at a particular person, and just give them the eye.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and be like, I'm gonna pass my turn and just hold out that one card, give them the look. You know, add some fun, add some flair to it. Really
good time.
Table going. It is.
Oh yeah. 100%. It's a lot of fun. Play the mind games and make the jokes. It's cool. As long as I guess that to me is the main difference between casual Magic and competitive Magic. What is the goal of the experience? Is your goal just to win, or is your goal to actually have a fun experience with your friends? And yeah, I take suboptimal lines in Commander all the time. One thing that actually is funny, one thing I struggled with for a long time, is on my streams, I do viewer challenges a lot. I play with my viewers quite a bit, which is a lot of fun. If you're a streamer out there, highly recommend. It's a good time. And one thing that I would struggle with is, do I take the optimal lines in a one-on-one viewer battle? Or do I like sandbag a little bit and let them show off what their deck is doing? And again, I try to read the room. I try to get an idea of what their goal is with our challenge and try to get an understanding of that. But yeah, recently I've decided that in those contexts, because we're playing standard or explorer or historic, I leave the door open for them to say, hey, would you mind letting me give me a couple of turns, let me show off? And that's fine. But I've also started just taking the optimal lines, and I've actually gotten a hard time about that sometimes. Because there was one game where a buddy of mine challenged me to a game of janky historic. That was the format that he wanted to play, was janky historic. Okay. And so I brought a deck built around Precursor Golem, which I think is pretty darn janky. It's a 5-drop with like this weird synergy that like nobody else plays.
Yep.
Well, I happened to hit the perfect line and did like 32 unblockable damage on turn 4. And he was like, janky? What is this? I was like, okay. I happened to hit the perfect, like I had the best draw I could have possibly asked for to ramp into it. But like, the cards I ended up beating with, it was Precursor Golem, Valiant Farewell, and Shelter. Like, how is that not janky? I don't know.
Like, that's janky.
Anyway, so it's one of those things where it's like, how do you define it? And what are you ultimately trying to go for? In that case, I was able to deliver a kill shot on turn 4, which is not something you associate with janky decks. Like that's not generally, but it's a combo. Exactly. Yeah. I pulled off a goofy combo. Like I happened to hit it just right. Yeah, but it's also funny too because those like the 2 cards, Shelter and Valiant Farewell. Valiant Farewell is digital only, by the way, so it's only in Historic and Alchemy. But even then, it's not a good card. And Shelter is like an old classic, and that's okay, but not great compared to what you see nowadays. But in a Precursor Golem deck, they happen to line up perfectly. Anyway, so in that case, I took the optimal line. And I took the optimal line because also it was a friend of mine, so I think I thought he would take it well. Apparently I made him misread that. But that's okay. But competitive, casual, janky, I mean, that deck is inconsistent, but it happened to hit that one time.
It was the experience of the fun for it, and that's what puts in the casual mindset of play. Your goal was to have fun. You weren't going in with the mindset, I'm gonna win. You're in with the mindset. I'm gonna do my thing. Like it doesn't. The further definition, I guess, to push this in, don't worry about if your deck has like a 2-card combo. Don't worry about if your goal is to win in a game. That by definition changes how you're playing. If your goal is, hey, I have this cool combo in the list, or I have this cool way of playing, but your goal is to showcase that and have fun, that's gonna make for a casual experience. It's so yeah, like mindset is what defines it. I don't know, like people, listeners, valued members of our real estate landlord community.
Mhm.
What is casual to you? Is casual mindset? Is it casual a label? Can you define everything as casual? I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah,
Let us know in the comments down below.
yeah, absolutely. Please do. And don't forget, while you're down there, like and subscribe. It helps a lot.
And it does. Got a hashtag sellout? No. Anyways. And my dude, where can the fine people find you?
Yeah. So, well, when we're not here having lovely conversations, I also have my own YouTube channel, Hamhocks42, and I stream on Twitch as well. Twitch.tv/Hamhocks42. I'm actually pushing for a partner as of this recording, waiting to hear back on an application. So fingers crossed. So even just lurks, you don't even have to say anything. Just keep like a browser window open with Twitch.tv/Hamhocks42. It would help me out immensely. So thank you for considering that. And Astrals, how about you, my friend? Where can people find you?
Y'all can find me at Astralsflame on Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. If you like Dungeons and Dragons or weird shenanigans of things, I'm over there. But as I have said on Twitter, I'm actually entering into my control deck or control player era. So I am playing control on streams now because one's out and I have deck techs to finish, and I have like 5 control decks I haven't tested out. But
There
I
you
got
go.
Urza in them, and I usually, when I've melted Urza at this point, I win. So if you want to see me enter a new era,
You've melded Mishra enough times. Now it's time to
yeah,
meld Urza. Yeah.
it's Arrow. It's all about Urza. No spells for you. Anyways, but friends, as Ham did say earlier, remember to drop us a follow, subscribe, get your heads up on those new listings, and until next time, we are your landlords.